This is the audio track that goes with around about a 40-minute floor yoga practice. And it might be worth just looking through this video to familiarize yourself with the moves before you start your practice, or practice somewhere that you can see the screen comfortably from where you are. And obviously you want to begin by having a yoga mat on the floor and wearing some comfortable clothing. So you might want to just pause the video at this point and go and get your equipment organized. So we begin the practice by just simply lying on the floor on your mat, lying on your back and just sensing into the body as it lies here. Maybe beginning with the feet, just noticing how your feet are in this moment. And once you've tuned in to sensations in the toes or the soles or the tops of your feet, maybe noticing how the heels are connected to the earth, the quality of that sensation of contact. And then just scanning up to say hello to the calves and the thighs. And then just lightly readjusting your legs so that the feet are around about a hip width apart. Scanning up through the pelvis and the back, just assuring that your posture as you lie is nice and relaxed. Coming up through the belly and the chest, perhaps just tuning into that belly breathing, connecting with the diaphragm and the belly, the rise and the fall of the breath. And of course the expansion and contraction of the chest. And just holding the breath as an anchor, the center of the body. Just scanning now through the shoulders, down through the arms, and perhaps taking this opportunity to lay your arms just gently by your sides, and if it feels comfortable, with the palms facing upwards. And scanning back up through the arms into the shoulders and the neck and the head. And as you're lying here, using this opportunity to settle into a sense of embodied awareness. Noticing all the parts of the body that are in contact with the ground beneath you. Maybe there's a sense of the temperature or the texture of the mat beneath you. And also an awareness of the parts of the body that are open to the air, maybe. Noticing air temperature or currents. And of course, noticing any parts of the body that might be in contact with clothing, socks, or shoes, and how that might feel on the skin in different parts of the body. And then inviting a sense of the body as a whole and how it feels to be lying here on the floor. Just a little internal weather check. Noticing what energy is in the body right now. Perhaps you're arriving into practice today in a state of agitation or maybe fatigue, or perhaps a sense of ease and calm. We're just taking a moment to recognize what the weather pattern of the body is today. And once again, connecting to the breath through the rise and the fall of the belly and the expansion and contraction of the chest. Where does the breath feel most present in your body right now? And even as you're lying still on the mat, recognizing all the movements in the body connected to that rise and fall of the breath on each in breath and each out breath. So now we're going to begin a sequence of movements, but just stay with your breath and sense into that embodied sense of breathing underneath my introductory words. So in this sequence of movement, the aim here is mindful movement. The goal is to use this practice to sense into embodied awareness. There's no gold medals for strength or endurance. This is not like training for a marathon or strength or agility. Just simply using the movements as a mindful exercise. It might be that as you go through these movements, you notice discomfort or comfort, a sense of pleasant or unpleasant, a sense of, being stretched or muscle fatigue. So this is the purpose of the practice, to be able to notice and perhaps work around that edge between comfort and discomfort, or the edge between ease and straining. We're not reaching beyond that boundary, but more just learning where that boundary is. Learning to work the edge between practicing in comfort and ease and just pushing beyond into what becomes difficult. And very often that is noticed in the body when we find that we've stopped breathing, we're bracing to hold a move or straining and shaking. So just dancing around that edge and maybe learning to experiment in a kind of light-hearted and playful way with just going a little bit over the edge, and then coming back into what is more comfortable. And this is a great practice of embodied awareness that we can then adapt to recognizing the boundaries of our lifestyles or activities or emotional reactivity, and finding the edge and working the edge of those too. So let's begin our sequence of movements. And we begin by just lifting the arms off the mat, keeping them straight, moving from the shoulders, raising those arms very slowly till they are about 90 degrees from the floor. Just noticing how that movement is feeling in the shoulders and any adjustments that the body's making through the back and the ribs. And then the invitation is to just lower the arms backwards as if you were stretching them above your head. And here is our first sensing point. What is the limit of movement in those shoulders? And everyone has different levels of flexibility. Some of us, we might not reach the mat. Others, it might be quite comfortable. So sensing into what is in this movement for you. And as we maintain the arms reaching back above our heads, let's just hold that position and notice what comes alive in the hands, the arms, the shoulders, and then even down through the back, the ribs, the belly. There might even be sensations in the legs as the whole body kind of counterbalances this whole change in its shift of gravity, the point of gravity, center of gravity. Just reminding yourself to breathe. If you're bracing, see if there's a way of just inviting a softening of the breath and a return to that sensation of the belly breathing. Now, very slowly, just raising the arms back up until they're about 90 degrees. And from there, lowering them back down to your sides. And let's just take a few seconds to sense into how the body feels at the end of that move. Now the invitation is to place your arms out to the sides, using them as a kind of an anchor to stabilize the upper part of the body through the arms and the shoulders, before sliding your feet up towards your backside so that your knees point up in the air. Your legs are bent at the knees and your feet are closer to your backside. And again, just noticing where that feels comfortable for you. What we're going to do now are some pelvic tilts. So we begin by pressing the lower back into the ground by rolling the pelvis backwards. And you might notice here how this affects the shoulders and the arms, and even perhaps a tensing of some of the muscles in the abdomen. Checking in with how you can breathe around that. The belly should still stay relatively soft. for breathing. And then rolling the pelvis forwards so that the lower back now arches and lifts up off the ground. So your backside is still in contact with the ground and your shoulders are still there, but your back will have arched with the tilt of your pelvis forwards. Then let's just repeat that move. So let's tilt the pelvis backwards again till the back is in contact with the mat. And then tilting the pelvis forwards and arching that back off the floor. And then in your own time, maybe just repeating that movement once or twice, just exploring all the sensations that this brings alive through that movement. And then just relaxing your arms by your sides and coming back to just that neutral pose we had at the beginning. And once again, checking in with the body, the breath, and any echoes of our pelvic movements that might be felt in the shoulders, the back, the legs. Moving on to our next movement, the invitation is to lift the legs off the floor, bending the knees, and then just tucking the arms in behind your knees. So you have your knees pointing straight up in the air, and then your feet and calves just flopped, bent, relaxed. And sensing into that very gentle stretch that you might feel as your arms are pulled a little bit by the weight of the legs. Also noticing what the body feels like as it's kind of scrunched up, holding the knees. Maybe noticing parts of the buttocks that have now lifted up off the mat. Noticing the back, keeping you stable on the mat. And then if you're comfortable with this, and this is where our mindful yoga practice is really a practice in mindfulness, in knowing what the body tells us is our comfort zone, and then adapting things accordingly. If this feels comfortable, as lifting the head up off the mat, as if you were trying to move your nose towards your knees, noticing the curl of the shoulders up off the mat, the bending forwards of the neck, and the sense of stretch and contraction in different muscles. And holding that posture for as long as feels comfortable before letting it go and relaxing gently back down onto the mat. Maintaining your knees up in the air, your legs bent, we're now going to place our hands on the kneecaps and then gently guide the knees around in a clockwise direction. So tracing clockwise circles with your knees. And these circles are parallel to the floor. So you're just gently moving the knees sideways, forwards, sideways, backwards, in slow and mindful circles. Now you're moving your knees. Let's have a sense into any other parts of the body where this movement can be felt. Changes in pressure, different parts of the body taking the weight on the mat. The effect of the movement in the shoulders and the ribs. Changes of weight in the pelvis or the buttocks. And then just reversing direction. So now moving everything in an anti-clockwise direction. And noticing again how this movement is felt through the whole body. Gentle, easy movements. Even checking into the muscles of the abdomen and feeling how they are working forwards and backwards and side to side. Always aiming to maintain an easy breath. If you find you're bracing your breath or shuddering in your breath, perhaps just ease back a little bit on the intensity of the movement until you find your flow. Good job. Now we're going to bring our feet down, back on the mat, keeping the knees bent. For our next movement, just inviting the hands to clasp behind your neck. And for some of us with tight shoulders, this is not easy to do. So just as close to clasping as you can, without straining the neck or the back. And then we are going to keep the shoulders flat on the mat, but invite the knees to flop over together towards the right hand side. So this brings a twist in the spine as the knees bend over to the right, but the shoulders and upper back stay flat on the mat. And just sensing into how far you can go with this stretch. If you're not very flexible, perhaps the knees don't quite reach the mat and your arms are not quite clasped behind your head, but just sensing into the possibilities of this movement as much as you can. Noticing how that stretch feels through the pelvis, through the spine, through the muscles of the lower back, through the belly, and down the left side of the rib cage. And perhaps also noticing what it feels like to have the right leg bent, leaning over towards the floor, and the left leg weighing down on top of it as we kind of encourage those knees down towards the floor on the right hand side. And just breathing into that stretch for a few mindful breaths. Then gently inviting the knees back up to kind of pointing at the sky. And just take maybe a little relax from those arms. Bring them back down to your sides, noticing anything in the shoulders from clasping your hands or anything in the hips or the back from that stretch. And this is a good point to notice also that mindful movement might bring up a beautiful opportunity to observe what goes on in the mind and the emotions when we're asked to do things that could be a little bit challenging. A really good opportunity to practice awareness of reactivity. So noticing any thoughts or thinking about, oh, I can or I can't, or this is easy or hard, or I'm not good enough, I'm not flexible enough, if only I should. Noticing how that busy mind works when we ask our body to do something a little bit different. And perhaps just labeling those thoughts. Oh yeah, there's judgment. There's evaluation. There's doubt. There's worry. Or conversely, perhaps there's celebration or a sense of ease or a sense of I can do this, achievement. So just observing what thoughts are there before returning attention to the body and just inviting a being with an exploration with gentle curiosity. I wonder what will come up this time as we encourage our knees now over towards the left-hand side, returning our hands to behind our neck, clasped there. So our elbows are kind of sticking out the sides. And then gently encouraging the knees together to lean over to the left-hand side. And again, just taking that stretch as far as your body wants it to go. And just take a few moments to explore all the right-hand side of the body that is stretched, and the left-hand side of the body as it's slightly turned towards the floor. Just breathing through that, softening around it, tuning into the felt sense of this movement. And then just bringing the knees back up to pointing to the sky. Allowing the legs to straighten, bringing the arms back to your sides, palms upwards. And let's just take 10 or 20 seconds to reconnect with the body and the breath. Okay, good job. Now we're going to turn over, and we want to end up being on all fours. So on your hands and your knees. And we're going to begin a sequence of moves that you might be familiar with called cat and cow. So we begin with cat, which is a movement that really begins from the pelvis and through the back, kind of a raising of the back and an arching towards the sky, as if you were a cat arching its back. And as you do this, you might notice a change in weight as the hands maybe take more of the body's weight. You might notice a shifting of sensation in the pelvis, a tucking in of the abdomen and the belly. and that stretch through the back and the ribs. And then also sensing as we kind of elongate the pelvis, lean a little bit back onto the knees, and then allow the belly and the back to curve down towards the floor as we go into what is known as cow. Here you might notice a sensation around the shoulder blades, the belly, and then all the muscles that are working in the hips and the lower back. And in your own time, just gently and slowly move between those two poses, noticing how the movement works through the joints of the spine and the hips and the shoulders as you once again arch your back and lower your head into cat. Perhaps exploring what it feels like to hold that pose for a while. And then releasing through the lower spine and the pelvis as we once again go down into cow, lifting the head up. So I'm going to give you maybe 10 or 15 seconds just to explore one more round of that movement in your own way. So, well done. Well done. We are now halfway through our sequence of movements. So you want to stay on your hands and knees, because what we're going to do now is a pose where we begin by lifting the right arm off the floor, imagining you're Superman or Superwoman with your arm stretched out in front of you as if you were flying. And then we're going to take the opposite leg, in this case the left, and we're going to lift it out behind you. So your weight is balanced between your right knee and your left hand, and your head is just kind of looking towards your fingertips of your right hand, sensing into, first of all, the balancing, trying to keep the breath as smooth as possible, and noticing what happens in the muscles as you hold this pose for a little bit longer. Sensing into the muscles of the hips and thighs, the muscles of the lower back, the upper back and the shoulder of the hand that is reaching out. Maybe wiggle your fingertips. And also sensing into what it feels like in your right knee and your left hand as you're holding the body's weight. And then just very gently bring those right hand and left leg back onto the mat. Now we're going to raise the left arm up into Superman or Superwoman pose. Imagine you're flying and lifting the right leg this time off the ground. Now you might notice there's a difference between two sides of the body. One might feel quite stable. One you might have to work to keep your balance. So that's the practice, just noticing these differences. Noticing how your body's working to keep the balance. And a few moments just to check into the muscles of the leg, thighs, back, arm, and the knee and the hand that are holding your weight. And then in your own time, just lowering your hands and legs back onto the floor. And well done. Good job. Now we're going to move back onto our back. And this time with the arms kind of bracing yourself at the sides. So just your arms a little bit out from the body. And we're going to raise up the pelvis and the back off the ground while keeping the feet and the shoulders on the ground so that you come up into what is known as a bridge. So you have your feet firmly on the floor, your knees pointing up in the air, and the back relatively straight. And you can notice the weight in your shoulders. You might even notice the stability of this pose. Notice you could even take your hands off the ground. They're not really needed to hold your balance. Perhaps even noticing a little bit of pressure at the back of the head. But your neck should be quite relaxed. And then noticing perhaps the work that's being done through the thighs to hold this pose, through the pelvis. Noticing what it feels like to have your abdomen kind of vaguely upside down. Noticing the sense of the breath moving in the body. And at some point, you might notice that your thighs, your muscles are telling you they're actually working quite hard, particularly maybe down the inside of the thighs. So, that's an interesting sensation. And then, in your own time, just slowly, maybe bone by bone, joint by joint, lowering your back onto the mat again until you feel your pelvis reconnecting with the ground, and you can even then notice the relaxation of the muscles in the thighs. So let's just do that one more time, this time without me talking, so you can just sense into that movement all by yourself. So I'll talk you up through the stretch, and then I'll leave you to explore the sensation of holding the pose without me talking. So let's just see if we can raise, first of all, the pelvis off the ground, and then bone by bone of the spine lifting off the floor as if our body's pulled up by a string. Noticing the weight being taken on by the feet and the shoulders. I'm going to be silent now as you can check in with the sensations in your thighs and abdomen and your breathing. And from here, just slowly, vertebrae by vertebrae, gently lowering the back, noticing the work being done in the muscles of the abdomen. And then noticing that release of the stretch in your legs. And the muscles of the thighs going, ooh, thank you, as the pelvis reconnects with the floor. Very good job. So just stay there for a minute or two and recognizing what's going on in the body as everything relaxes. So staying in this pose, we're now going to take our arms out to the sides as if we were making the letter T, keeping our legs bent so our feet are still up near our backside, our knees are still pointing in the air. And we're going to do that twist again. First of all, leaning our legs over to the right hand side, just as far as they want to go. We're not forcing our knee into the ground. Noticing any sensations in the ribs of the right hand side. Noticing any sensations on the spine or on the left. Noticing where the right hip is in contact with the ground. And And the left hip might even be off the ground. And then bringing us back to neutral. And as you can probably guess, we're now going to repeat that over to the left. Again, noticing any differences between one side and the other. And then bringing that back up to neutral, and I'm now going to let you repeat the stretch to the right, very slowly. Invite a sense of relaxation into this, smooth and easy. Just hold that stretch, more like that flop, for a few easy mindful breaths. Bringing the knees back up to neutral, and then over to the left. Again, just an easy flopping over. And if you have any hip issues, just being very gentle. Always inviting a sense of breathing in and softening around anything that wants to tighten up. Sometimes when our body is aware that we've been hurt or we have habitual pain, little parts of the body we're very tender about. The instinct in the body is to tighten and to contract, but that actually does tend to make things a little bit worse sometimes. So the invitation here is to say, yeah, there's that reactivity in the body, and can I just breathe softly around that? And then bringing our knees back up to pointing towards the ceiling. Now, the next part of this practice is one that some of us find very easy and some of us don't. So with one leg now bent, we're going to take the right leg and we're going to point the foot up towards the ceiling. You might not even be able to straighten your knee, so just go as far as your leg wants. The invitation is to point the toe up to the sky, and you'll know when you feel the stretch. All right, we could even just lower that leg again and then raise it, and when you feel the stretch, just go, yep, there it is, and that's just the point you want to be at. Try to tune into any thoughts of, oh, that's not good enough. It's perfect. If you can feel the stretch, doesn't matter if your leg is bent or straight. You have found that point where your leg says, this is enough. Well done for noticing. Then we're going to take our hands, we're just going to clasp them round the back of the leg. And just stay there. Again, just inviting your toes to point. You'll feel that stretch. Now, we're not trying to, stretch the leg. We're trying to feel the stretch. Notice the stretch. And then just lower that leg gently back down. And the same on the other side. Raising the left leg up. Ooh, that one might feel different. Noticing perhaps any clenching of the muscles in the hip or the thighs or the buttocks or down the sides of the legs. And again, just pointing the toes till you feel the stretch. And then again, clasping your hands behind your legs. Then lowering that leg back down. Now, the invitation is to move on to your right side. And with this, you will have your right elbow under your head. So as if you were kind of like reclining at a Roman banquet. You want to have your right knee just slightly bent so that it keeps the weight of your body stable. And you can even take your left hand and place it on the floor in front of your chest, just to keep everything stable. You want to rock your weight just ever so slightly forward, And then we're going to take our straightened left leg, we're going to lift it up at the side. And again, your body will tell you when you reach the point at which this becomes, between ease and discomfort, and just find that space, that point. Okay, that's what we're doing this movement for. We're not trying to be double jointed or tie ourselves in pretzels, just noticing that point. And if you have a history of hip injuries or weird things going on in your pelvis, just be very gentle with this. And then very, very slowly lower it down. It's actually quite an interesting move when you sense into the way that the weight of the leg is sensed. So why not do that again? Now that you know where your comfort zone is, gently lifting the leg up, finding that sweet spot, and then just very slowly lifting the leg back down. And because we like to keep things balanced, let's just move over now onto our left-hand side. And exactly the same. We have our left hand elbow under the head, our little Roman banquet recline. We have our right arm now bracing the body in front of our chest, and then of course raising that right leg up into the air and noticing how this feels different. Noticing where that sweet spot of I've raised my leg high enough for me. Any contracting of muscles in the hips, that's probably a good cue that you've maybe gone too far. And very gently lowering it down again. The lowering down is always interesting because you can feel your whole body changing as the weight, the kind of center of gravity redistributes all through the body. You can even sense the changes in the elbow that your head's resting on the hip as it takes more weight as you raise your leg up. You can feel your rib cage on the ground taking more weight as well as you lift the leg up. And then just noticing how it all rebalances as you lower your leg back down again. Okay, good job. Oh, you're doing so well. And what an interesting set of practice. So now we're going to move to our second last pose. And this one is a little bit strange, but give it a go anyway. We're going to move over onto our stomachs and lie flat on the floor. You want to have your arms down by your side. And this is why we have a yoga mat, because we're going to place our forehead right onto the floor and just see how we can relax around that. This is an interesting pose for noticing the breathing in the chest. As we breathe in and out, we can notice the whole body kind of expanding through the back and the shoulders. You might also notice the temperature and the texture of the mat on your forehead. Quite an unusual sensation. Noticing any tendency in the body to brace rather than relax. And then we're going to bring us back to the pose that we began with, just lying on the mat, on your back, Your legs quite relaxed, hip width apart, your feet perhaps even splayed out a little bit, toes vaguely towards the ceiling, arms out by your sides, palms pointing upwards. Reconnect with the earth. Reconnect with the body. Notice the echoes and the legacy of this yoga workout. Tune into the internal weather pattern. The feeling tone of this moment. Checking in with your toes, your feet. Scanning up through the legs, the lower legs, the knees, the thighs. Up through the pelvis. The inner organs around the pelvis. The lower back and the belly. The upper back and the rib cage. Shoulders, the arms, hands. The neck, the head, the face. Perhaps just inviting a little smile. Well done. Well done for doing your practice. And then just returning our attention to the breath, the body breathing and being breathed. And this is the end of this audio track, but of course feel free to just stay here for as long as you want, just tuning into the body and the breath. Maybe a little perfect opportunity to carry out a body scan or some other meditation while you lie here. But for me, I'm going to end this recording right here and say to you, well done for doing this beautiful floor yoga practice.